Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Harmoning with the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today on behalf of all my partner chambers. The Real-Time Solution webinar series is in partnership with the Apple Valley, Burnsville, Hastings, Lakeville, and River Heights Chambers of Commerce. I want to thank all my partners. I also want to thank our sponsor for this series, Xcel Energy. They're a great partner and a great supporter of all of our local businesses. So thank you for helping us make this webinar series possible. A special shout out to Dakota County today for their support of our local businesses and for joining us today to fill you in on the details of this grant program. So I am going to turn this over to our Dakota County Chairperson, Mary Liz Holberg.
Thank you. Glad to be here today. I'll be rather brief. Lisa's got all the details of the program, but wanted to thank everybody for participating and very grateful. The county board is well aware of the fact that the business community not only provides jobs, services, products to the taxpayers and families in Dakota County, but you're such an important part of our nonprofits, our charitable organizations. I mean, the reach is far and wide. So the board has been really committed to doing what we can to help businesses in this very challenging time. And so today we're going to talk about the latest round of grants that are available for businesses located in Dakota County. The first three grant rounds that we did were more than $14 million. And most recently, we did another $2 million for bars and restaurants. This next round, we have a total of $8.3 million, and our efforts are focused on trying to provide grants, particularly to businesses that did not get state funding or funding in the first couple rounds. So we have a priority program where certain businesses will be first in line, if you will, for the grants. But then as we move through the process, we believe there's going to be extra money for a third round. And so even if you are a business that received grants, we want you to reapply, update your figures, and we're hoping that we'll be able to then provide in round three additional funds even to businesses that have received money from Dakota County already. And so at this point, again, thank you for all you do for our communities. And I'd like to introduce Lisa Elfson. She's the Director of Community and Economic Development of the Dakota County CDA. And I know you've all seen her at your chamber events and programs, and she's one of our superstars and has been working for months in these various grant programs. And so she'll line out the particulars of this next round, and then certainly we'll answer any questions you might have at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Holberg. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chambers, for the invitation today to be able to talk more about the Round 4 program. I'm going to share my screen here. I have just a couple of slides to try to provide some of the details. As Chair Holberg mentioned, there is about a little over $8.5 million that Dakota County received. Some of that will be going to our third-party administrator to help us with the process, leaving about $8.3 million for direct payments to eligible businesses and nonprofits. This time around, it will be a maximum of up to $15,000. But as Commissioner Holberg mentioned, it's to ensure accessibility of the funds to all eligible applicants. The funds will be prioritized, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple slides. As for eligibility, the majority of these eligible criteria were identified in the state legislation from the state. It needs to be a physical location within Dakota County. For-profit businesses are eligible, but as well as nonprofit organizations. And the board chose to identify the nonprofits that are eligible are specifically the language identified in the legislation. So those are arts organizations, museums, and fitness centers that earn revenue similar to businesses, including but not limited to tax, ticket sales, and membership fees. I should mention, I'm sorry, that those are just examples, but really focusing on those nonprofits that earn revenue similar to businesses. There cannot be any tax liens against the entity with the Secretary of State, and our third-party administrator is checking that and verifying that piece of information. A really important piece needs to be there. It needs to be an direct or indirect impact on the entity by an executive order related to the COVID-19 pandemic. It doesn't need to be the most recent executive order. They can go back as far as when the first ones were done in March. The board then added a few other criteria, including looking at focusing on businesses that have 75 or less full-time equivalent employees. Round 1 and round 2 were at 50 employees or fewer, but now they've opened it up a bit more to going up to the 75 employees. Sole proprietors are eligible. So if you're looking at the person who rents a space, who does hair, they can also apply. Home-based businesses are also eligible. In addition, the board requested that the businesses or nonprofits need to be in good standing with Dakota County and need to be in operation on or before November 1st, 2020. Ineligible applicants are folks who do not have a physical establishment in Dakota County, corporate-owned chains. I should mention franchises are considered eligible businesses as they were in rounds 1 and 2. And an applicant cannot have any default conditions prior to November 1st, 2020. And finally, there are a few applicants who cannot primarily drive income from gambling, adult entertainment, property rentals, property management, billboards, or lobbying. This is where we talk about trying to provide access, equal access to these funds. As Commissioner Holberg mentioned, really trying to focus on that priority 1. It breaks down into priority 1, 2, and 3. The majority, all of the funding is put into priority 1 for consideration for folks who have never received funds from Dakota County or the state grant funds, not loans, but grant funds, would be the first eligible applicants, with $7.8 million for Pool A for the nonprofits, and then a $500,000 broken out just for, for nonprofits, 7.8 for for-profits. And if those businesses or nonprofits are eligible, they're eligible for up to $15,000. These will be reviewed and approved and funded on a first come, first served basis. So the application is open right now. So those are currently being reviewed and could be funded right now. After the deadline is done, applications are due February 12th by 5 p.m. If there is any funding that has not been exhausted or awarded in priority 1, so there's some remaining from the 8.3, then funding will go to, on a first come, first served basis, to the priority 2 folks. Priority 2 folks are businesses that have received some amount of money, less than $15,000 from Dakota County or the state. And the applicant can request the difference between what they previously received versus what the maximum of $15,000. So for example, round 3, as Commissioner Holberg mentioned, it was $5,000 up to $5,000 for bars and restaurants. If there was a restaurant that got $5,000 in round 3 that never got money from the state or rounds 1 and 2, they could ask for another $10,000 to level up to that total of $15,000. Priority 3 is if there is money left over that hasn't been funded in priority 1 or priority 2, then businesses in priority 1 and priority 2, in addition to any businesses who received $15,000 or more previously from Dakota County or in state grant funds, could be considered for additional funding. Now, this is a lot of applicants. I think probably in rounds 1 and 2, there were more than 800 businesses that received $15,000 or more. But I really am encouraging them to still apply, because there is a likelihood that we could get to that priority 3 and they could receive some level of funding. How that funding will be distributed has not been determined yet by the county board. There will be a meeting, I believe it is February 16th, so after the deadline, when the board will be looking at the data to see how much funding has gone out for priority 1, how much can go out for priority 2, what's going to be left over priority 3, and what makes the most sense to distribute that funding. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on Friday, February 12th. As I mentioned, it's a first come, first serve for the priority 1 folks. They will be funded reviewed and funded. No funding will go out for priority 2 folks until after the deadline of the February 12th to make sure that there's opportunities for the priority 1 businesses to get in. And I should mention, you know, we think that there's probably close to 9,000 businesses that could meet that priority 1 group. It's just trying to find them and get them to apply if they could meet the eligibility. And then again, going to priority 3, if there is any funding available. The state legislation requires that all grants be awarded by March 15th. The county attorney's office has determined that means that grant agreements must be signed by that date. And then funds expended by April 1st. So all the checks need to be cut by that date. I wanted to show everyone just the screen of the application online portal we are using. We're using Baker Tilly as a third-party administrator. We also use them in rounds 2 and 3. They have a wonderful online application portal that really, you do need to create an account, and then you're able to log in and out as much as you want before you don't have to complete the application just at one point in time. You can save it and come back. I'm hearing from businesses, it's taking about 30 minutes or less to complete. There's only one verification document you need to upload. That is a W-9. It needs to be completed, signed, and dated and uploaded. You will notice on the application that there's questions about making sure you're eligible for the funding. But then there's also going to be, as Commissioner Holberg had talked about, questions about how to size the award for each applicant. And that's based on looking at operating expenses from March 1st to January 20th. That is a really long time, and I understand that, but why we wanted to make the time frame as long as possible was because we wanted to make sure that people could provide as much eligible operating expenses to get to that maximum award amount. You need to provide your eligible operating expenses minus whatever state funding, county funding, city funding, CARES funding, COVID funding you got. So there's not that we're not doing that double dipping that I know many of you have heard about with the other funding. And then finally, I had in this slide, and Jennifer had mentioned that already, but I have a link here to the program guidelines and the frequently asked questions. We have a dedicated phone number at the CDA to answer questions. I will be honest, you might not get a live person, but please leave a voicemail and I will get back to you within 24 hours. We are also checking the email quite regularly, and those can be for the small business email. Please email about anything, but specifically there is an email, grants@bakertilly.com. They are the ones who do the online portal. I do not know much or cannot help with many of the technical questions on that end, but that email address could definitely help with those questions. So with that, those are my slides. Sharing, that's okay.
Of course, that's great, Lisa. And we started to have some questions in the chat here. So one question, you touched on this in your presentation, but we have a question from someone about are new businesses eligible for the grants? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. If a business has been in business since, I think we have a start date of November 1st, 2020. So then they could look at providing their operating expenses for November, December, and then part of January.
Okay, thank you. And another question, will individual cities be giving out grants as well? I know we can't receive both, so should we wait to see what the city will do?
Sure. The legislation that was passed on December 14th, the state provided their own programs, and then the last bucket of money was directly to the counties. That specific legislation did not provide any money directly to the cities. So at this point in time, unless a city is choosing to fund it with their own resources, I am not aware of any at this time for city funds.
I'm not aware of any at this point either. Let's see. The next question we have, someone said, can you put the last slide up with the contact information? So maybe thank you. There we go. Another question, it says, I noticed you mentioned FCFS. How will you determine this order, first come, first serve? How will you determine the order for people in group 3 if you have funds remaining? Are you dating applications as they're received?
Sure. For priority 3, my understanding is it will not be a first come, first serve. I should not say that. I cannot take that decision out of the board's hands. The board has not decided how they want to fund that priority 3. It could be a first come, first serve. It could be across the board, an equal amount, say everyone gets $1,000. It could be based on total eligible operating expenses. There's a number of different ways it could be identified. First come, first serve is for priority 1 and priority 2, unknown yet to be determined for priority 3.
Thank you. Another question here to
Jennifer?
clarify. Yeah,
Could I
jump
just
in,
add?
Mary Liz, please.
So because we don't know how much money, if and how much,
Mhm.
it's really important to people that have already, businesses that have already received grant funds, that you update your financial data. So add in additional costs, et cetera, because when the board goes to determine how to distribute any possible round 3, it may be a function of a percentage of loss, or for businesses that have greater than a certain amount. So it's, while there's no guarantee that any business will receive funding in the 3rd part of this program, to have the most up-to-date information in the portal will be really important, because you won't be able to change information probably after that.
Thank you, Mary Liz. And I think we really do appreciate how the board has been trying to be laser focused on getting money out to the businesses of highest need first. And yeah, obviously they have to input their information as accurately as possible so you guys can work with that. A couple other questions here. It says, to clarify, if we received a state grant this month from the December business relief payment for restaurant, bars, and gyms, are we not eligible for this grant?
How you, from the Department of Revenue, that's what it sounds like, Jennifer, from like those direct payments. You
Sounds
would-
like the direct payments.
Yeah, the business would not be eligible for a priority 1 funding. There is still some, my understanding from how we're administering it is that they would, if it was more than $15,000 they got from those direct payments, which I think they all are, it would be considered a priority 3. But I think there might be some conversations about that at the board earlier the next month.
So what I'm hearing is apply.
Apply, yes.
Apply,
Yes,
right?
Just apply. We'll figure out the details later. It's
Because what I understand from conversations is you're trying to get the money out the door to priority 1 businesses who haven't received anything. Priority 2 to make up any gap of those that have maybe received something, but not that amount. And then priority 3 is really going to be based on need per se. It's going to be based on the amount of loss. And so for those businesses that are in that restaurant, bar, and gyms category, we know you're probably in a pretty high loss category. So definitely apply. Now we have
Jennifer,
a question. Yeah.
Can
Mary
I
Liz?
add to that?
Please.
The board hasn't made a final determinant of
Right.
the round 3, but a likely criteria to be considered is amount of loss. So
Okay.
that's why the need to keep your numbers accurate and up to date in the application is important. And of course, we don't know whether we are going to receive additional state or federal money moving forward. And so to the degree that a business's information is up to date and accurate, we will continue to likely use this Baker Tilly process and data to be able to move quickly and get additional monies out. And so we can't predict where this is going to go, and if and when there'll be more state or federal money in addition to the round 3, but this is the portal and the data sets that the county board will be using to make our decisions. So stay with it.
Yeah, for sure. The next question I have is that I'm an independent contractor with my business registered here in Dakota County at my home. However, my main office is in Ramsey County. I haven't been there since early April and not sure if and when we'll be returning. I would work from home about once a week anyways, as I've had the freedom to do that. Will I qualify for one of these grants?
Sorry, I'm at a loss. because there's always
That's
so many, there are so many
complex. Mhm.
scenarios. So if it's a home-based business, meaning that's where they do all the, most of their administrative work, yes, that would make sense to, if you identify Dakota County, your home as your business at this point in time, correct. If the business is saying that they also have an office in Ramsey that they've paid for, I don't think that I might just need this person's information. I'm not really certain at this point.
This might be a good one to reach out directly to Lisa with the
Yeah.
contact information
I
that's
just
on
don't want
here.
to, I don't want to make the wrong assumption right
Yep.
off the top of my head.
Sounds like you might need a little more. And a question, just confirming that this is a gift and it is not taxed. Who wants to jump in on that?
What I have seen and what guidance we have in our FAQ is that we are not to give any tax advice on what this funding is. And the state explicitly says that on their website as well, is that we can't identify whether it's taxable or not. I think they're to consult their tax.
And I think that's unfortunately been a moving target. So it is a grant, and the federal government for the original round of PPP has made that non-taxable. The state has not conformed to that yet. And that does not necessarily apply to these particular grants. So we will have to stay tuned and definitely talk to your tax professional, because I think these things keep changing. Another question, can an applicant submit a W-9 that was used in a prior application and thus dated in 2020, or does it need to reflect a current date to be valid?
It needs to reflect a current date to be valid.
Okay. Our business was registered in September, but we started operating in December 18th due to renovations for the location. Will there be any future grants for those of us that opened late?
Perhaps if I'm missing something, it sounds like they were in business after November 1st. Oh, prior on or before November 1st, right?
Right. So they registered in September, but they didn't open until December 18th.
That might need to be a future funding source for them, a future grant round.
Okay. And Lisa has put in her information. Next question, if we received a grant from the federal government, can we still apply for the grant from Dakota County?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
You can.
Okay.
That will not be, that is not considered, but on determining your priority within the structure. But yes, a lot of people have received federal funds and you are eligible.
Okay, and that includes the PPP, because that's the next question, correct?
Yep, correct. Yep.
Okay. The requested numbers of need-based on expenses that have not been covered by any other grant were entered. With regard to supporting documents or financials, the application didn't ask for specifics, just if the application had any added supporting documents. Should we go back and attach financials for the years or for March through December?
No, that is not a requirement. Trying to make this easy for the applicants, but ensuring that we have enough to be audited and ensure that we are funding eligible businesses, that was decided not to do that. The business is asked to certify that they have had impact. And there is also important to note that this will be audited by the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And if and when DEED comes and asks for those specifics, it is going to be on the onus of the business to be able to provide those financials.
Excellent. I do not see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I just want to say a special thank you again to the county board for their support of our local businesses, and Chair Mary Liz Holberg for being here today to have this conversation, and to Lisa Elfson. This is her second go round of this kind of workshop for county grant programs, and we really appreciate her taking the time to join us. Finally, I want to again thank my partners the Apple Valley, Burnsville, Hastings, Lakeville, and River Heights Chambers of Commerce. It's been a great partnership helping to put these webinars together. Our next webinar, we've had a busy week. We had our PPP one last week. We had this one today, but we really invite you to join us on Wednesday. Wednesday morning, Annie Meehan of AM Speaking is going to be joining us to talk about being the exception. In these trying times, we're all trying to figure out how to be our best and how to set ourselves apart. And this would be a great time to refresh and connect. This one will actually be our first time doing a Zoom meeting rather than a webinar for Real-Time Solutions. So it'll be an opportunity to interact a little bit, to hear Annie speak. And so I encourage you to, that is free to attend. It will not be recorded and will not be posted, unlike this one, which will be recorded and posted. But please plan to join us Wednesday morning or share it with your coworkers or your employees. It is free and open to the public to attend, but you have to register and attend. It will not be recorded and will not be shared. So thank you again to Xcel Energy, our sponsor for this webinar series. And we hope you all have a Chamber of Commerce day. Thank you so much.